Hello, boys and girls. This is Miss Graham and Miss Cisco here, and today we are here to teach you a knowledge lesson. So our goal today is I can compare and contrast the original United States flag to our current flag today. So before we get started, let's talk about what compare and contrast means. So when you compare and contrast, you think about what is the same and what is different. So if you look at this picture here, they are comparing dogs and cats. So on the left side in the brown, you see a dog at the top, and it says dog. On the right side, it's cat. So on the outside, it's what is different. So dogs and cats. Dogs bark, cats meow. Dogs chase cats, and cats chase mice. Dogs like to play, cats like to sleep. Dogs need to be given a bath to get clean, and cats can lick themselves clean. So those are all ways that dogs and cats are different. And in the middle, you see how the circles overlap each other? That is how dogs and cats are the same. What do they have in common? What do they both do? So dogs and cats are both types of pets, and they both have fur. So if you look over here in this yellow box, there are some keywords to think about. When you think about compare and contrast, you can think about both, like, to, also, but, and however. You can also think same and different. Difference on the outside, same's in the middle. So let's get started. Some vocabulary that you will be hearing in our story is alternating. Alternating means following one after another. An example is in the spring, I planted both beans and squash in alternating rows in the garden. Patriotism, loyalty to one's country. An example, many people show their patriotism to the United States by flying the American flag. Represent is to be a symbol of something, to speak or act on behalf of others. An example, the stars on the United States flag represent each of the states. A seamstress is a woman whose job is to sew. An example, her mother took the ripped dress to the seamstress. So our purpose today is listen carefully to find out how Betsy Ross's flag is similar to and different from our current flag today. And our title of the story is The Legend of Betsy Ross. Let's get started. Betsy and John Ross were newlyweds in 1773 when they opened their seamstress shop in the busy port town of Philadelphia. So you just heard that John and Betsy were newlyweds. What two separate words do you hear in the word newlywed? What do you think that word means? A seamstress is a person who sews with needle and thread to make or repair things made of cloth. John hung a sign outside their house at 239 Arch Street. The needle and the spool of thread helped people find their shop. So here he is holding up the picture of the needle and the spool of thread. At about the same time that Betsy and John were having a party to celebrate their wedding, patriots in Boston were having their own party, the Boston Tea Party. And you remember what a party that was. The patriots used the sea as a giant teapot, dumping shiploads of tea into it. After that night, the colonies decided to work together to come up with a plan for answering the British demand for taxes. The meeting of representatives from all 13 colonies, the First Continental Congress, was held in the Ross's hometown of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Midway between the New England colonies and the Southern colonies, Pennsylvania was an important meeting place for colonists from all over. John and Betsy found it an exciting way to live, especially as the Patriots began to gather there. John agreed with the Patriots cause and wanted to break away from Great Britain. One night, Betsy's husband, John, died suddenly. It was very sad, and not yet 3 years since Betsy and John Ross had celebrated their wedding day. After John's death, Betsy decided to run the seamstress business on her own. Betsy Ross was an independent woman. What does independent mean? She took great pride in her work and had become well known throughout the colonies for her tiny, even stitches and beautiful cloth. When men gathered in Philadelphia for meetings, they often ordered clothing from Betsy for their families at home. No order was too difficult for her. As war approached, Betsy was asked to make flags for the Pennsylvania Navy. The Continental Army, led by General George Washington, flew one of her flags as well. There is a famous legend about Betsy Ross. A legend is a story that's been told through the years and may or may not be true. According to this legend, Betsy sat in her shop, sewing and enjoying the light of a warm summer evening in June 1776, when she heard a loud rapping at her door. John's uncle, George Ross, stood before her with two other men. One of them was General George Washington himself. "Good evening," he began. "We have an important job that needs to be done very quickly. As your husband, John, was a patriot, and you are known to be the best seamstress in the colonies, we feel that you are the right person for this job." "Do come in," Betsy replied. "I will heat the kettle for your tea, and you can explain to me your business." "Thank you kindly, dear Betsy," said George Ross, entering the house, "but I'm afraid we do not have time to sit down. As you may have heard, the Continental Congress is meeting here in Philadelphia for a second time. We are on our way to a meeting this very evening. Soon, quite soon, we will formally declare our independence from Britain. We must be ready with a new flag, for we will no longer want to fly the flag of the British king." Betsy stood still, listening to his words and turning to General Washington, who had taken a scrap of paper from his coat pocket. "Mrs. Ross," General Washington said, "this is your chance to show your patriotism or love for your country as your late husband, John, did. I have drawn a rough design sketch for the new flag. Please take a look and let me know what you think. We would like for you to sew the first flag of a new nation, 13 colonies united against Great Britain." Betsy took the slip of paper from General Washington's hand. On it was a square drawing of 13 stripes and 13 stars. Betsy nodded her head and then looked up into General's face. "Why do you think the design had 13 stripes and 13 stars?" "Yes," she smiled, "I accept. I will gladly make this new flag. Might I offer just one suggestion, sir?" George Washington liked Betsy's suggestion of a 5-pointed star instead of the 6-pointed one that he had drawn. Then the three visitors turned and left as quickly as they had come. Betsy set to work on the flag the very next day. Taking down a red bolt or roll of cloth from the shelf, she measured and cut 7 stripes of equal length and width. Then she did the same thing with a bolt of white cloth, this time cutting 6 stripes. She applied her famous even stitches along the length of the stripes, first a red and then a white, until 13 stripes of alternating colors joined together to form a large rectangle. Next, Betsy measured and cut a square from a bolt of blue cloth and carefully stitched it into the upper left-hand corner of the flag. Days later, when she had completely finished, 13 white stars almost twinkled in a perfect circle against the dark blue background. When Betsy showed George Washington and his fellow representatives the finished flag, they were very pleased. They knew this flag would represent the new country well. The new flag stood as an important symbol to the men who gathered under it on the 4th of July when they voted to approve their letter of independence to King George. 1 year later, in June 1777, the Continental Congress officially adopted Betsy Ross's flag, the Stars and Stripes, as the national flag of the United States of America. So before we move on to our activity, I have some discussion questions for you. Think about these questions and answer them to a family member before we move on to the next one. So what type of work did Betsy Ross do? You say she was a seamstress? You are correct. The title of the read aloud is The Legend of Betsy Ross. What is a legend? A legend is a story that has been told and retold through the years that may or not be true. We have read a lot of different legends throughout first grade this year. What did the first official flag of the United States look like? Describe that to a family member. The first official flag had 13 alternating red and white stripes and 13 white stars on a blue background. Why were there 13 stripes and 13 stars? The 13 stripes and 13 stars represent the 13 colonies. Great job. So our goal today was I can compare and contrast. So we are going to be comparing and contrasting Betsy Ross's flag, which is over here. It's called the original American flag. And then our current American flag today. And here's a picture of that. So when we talk about compare and contrast, we have two circles that we use. And in the middle, they overlap. In the middle, that is what is the same. And on the outside is what is different. So first, let's talk about what is different. What is something different about the two flags? So the original American flag only has 13 stars. How many stars does our flag have today? Our flag today has 50 stars. So that is something that is different. What's something else that's different? Ooh, the stars are in a circle in the original flag. That's right. And what's different about our flag today? The stars are not in a circle. You see, the stars kind of are in lines or rows. So now let's move on to what's the same about them. Think about that. What's the same? They both have 13 stripes. That's right. That did not change. And they use the same color. So if you look, both flags use red, white, and blue. Great job. They both have stars and stripes. So our goal is I can compare and contrast the original United States flag to our current flag today, and we just did that, so awesome work. And for your homework tonight, we would like for you to compare and contrast one of these options, the sun versus the moon. You know a lot of facts about both of those from our astronomy unit. Oranges and apples, and the Arctic versus the desert. And you know a lot of facts about both of those habitats. If you finish one of those and you'd like to compare and contrast something different, feel free to do that. And as always, send your teachers a picture of your work when you are finished. And for Tuesday, we want you to pause this video and come back here. This is your work for Tuesday. So on Tuesday, we want you to design a class flag. You can just get a blank piece of paper and think about what kind of things would you include in your flag to let everyone know it represents your class. So if you think back to the flags, Betsy Ross's flag had stars that represented each colony. And our flag today has stars that represent each state. We want you to make a flag representing your class, which means you have to include everyone in it. And then after you've drawn your flag, you can write 2 to 3 sentences telling us about your flag design. Tell us why you chose that symbol. Tell us who you included. It can be 2 to 3 sentences. And then send us a picture of your work for a special shout out.
And remember, boys and girls, if you love the story about Betsy Ross, please go down to the link in the description box below, and you'll find a video that an elementary school with kids your age doing a video talking about Betsy Ross, and it's pretty fun and funny.
Yes, it's an awesome video. And if you watch the video, you can leave us a comment in our comment section. See you tomorrow.